Welcome everyone to the ICSS Sunday Morning Marxist Forum. My name is Paulina Vasilyev and I'm a member of the program committee for these morning sessions. ICSS stands for the Institute for the Critical Study of Society. We're based in Oakland, California in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our weekly programs are online via Zoom every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, and you can sign up at our website ICSSmarks.org to receive weekly email announcements for our Sunday sessions. We will start, as usual, with a presentation, and after a short break for announcements, we'll have a group discussion where people can express their views and ask questions. This is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. Please note that the opinions expressed are those of the speaker and participants. They do not necessarily represent those of ICSS. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our motto is taken from Marx's 11 Theses on Feuerbach. The philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Today's topic is Drop the ADL, why rank and file National Educators Association teachers got it right and why their leadership got it wrong. And our speaker is Marcy Winograd, coordinator of CODEPINK'S Drop the ADL campaign. Marcy co-produces CODEPINK Radio, and she also organizes with the California legislative team of Jewish Voice for Peace Action. Marcy will highlight CODEPINK'S Drop the ADL campaign, which includes pushing resolutions at union meetings, speaking at local school boards, and raising awareness among teachers and parents about the role of the Israel Lobby Group. Now, I forgot to mention, Marty is also a member of CTA and UTLA Retired, and she blogs about militarism and U.S. foreign policy at CounterPunch, Common Dreams, CODEPINK blog, and LA Progressive. So please join me in welcoming Marcy Winograd to the ICSS Marxist Forum.
Thank you so much, Paulina, and everyone who's joining us today. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here to share the work of CODEPINK'S Drop the ADL Anti-Defamation League campaign, as well as our partnership with the national organization Drop the ADL from Schools. I wanted to start out, and I hope that while I'm speaking, you'll feel free to post in the chat your name and maybe any organization that you're active in where this work that we're discussing today might be relevant. Why the ADL? Okay, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, a lot of us know it, maybe not those of us on this chat, but publicly as a civil rights organization. And so we are really here to rip off that mask. It is an organization to promote the state of Israel and Zionism as an ideology of settler colonialism that rests on the ethnic extermination of indigenous Palestinians. The Anti-Defamation League has taken a huge role in trying to silence dissent during this horrific genocide that we are witnessing in Gaza. And they have been successful on many fronts in operating almost like a protection racket. You know, I think that even if an institution doesn't necessarily agree with the ADL's position that anti-Zionism, criticism of the state of Israel, its founding principles of ethnic supremacy equals anti-Semitism, even if they don't necessarily agree or even understand the arena, they want to cooperate with the ADL because of concerns around lawsuits and defunding of universities and school districts. So our position at CODEPINK is that we need to unmask what the ADL is all about, educate the public, certainly activists and parents and students and teachers about the not so hidden agenda of the ADL and why school districts must reject the ADL as an educational partner. We're going to share a lot of links that will shed more light on the ADL's agenda and the pushback, but I wanted to preface it by saying that we recently witnessed a great victory with the rank and file of the National Education Association, a 3 million member teacher organization, in fact, the largest union in the country, voting not to use materials from the ADL and not to turn to the ADL or accept the ADL's teacher training because of its conflation with, criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. Before we look at that motion and before we discuss the capitulation of the board's leadership, the president, Becky Pringle, and a board that consists of over 150 members in overturning the rank and file decision, motion, I wanted to share with you the agenda of the ADL, really specifically what it is. Yes, it is to conflate criticism of Israel as a racist state or as a state of ethnic supremacy with anti-Zionism, with anti-Semitism rather, but to do this by strategically promoting what we call the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition and examples. So if Paulina, you could please pull that up, we can take a look at it. And mind you, the definition is not really the problem, it's more the examples. So we call it the IRA for short, and this was examples and definitions that were accepted by about 34 countries, and they are now pushing it out across the globe, focusing on the United States and going school district by school district, state by state. So here's the working definition. It's not so controversial. We can scroll down a little bit. Okay, so we want to fight those evils of anti-Semitism, the perception of Jews, which maybe expresses hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. All right, I don't think there's argument there. Certainly at CODEPINK, and I would say across the board with those who are working on the Drop the ADL from Schools campaign, we condemn anti-Semitism categorically, but we see it as another form of racism, principally advanced by white supremacists. So if we can scroll down a little bit further on that document, does everybody see the document?
We lost the screen share. There you go.
Okay, so if we could scroll down a little bit further, keep going, and we'll see examples. Now, some of these examples you wouldn't argue with. Killing Jews, justifying the killing. Yeah, of course, that's anti-Semitic. But if you keep scrolling, you will see that a lot of these examples center the state of Israel. So here we see, so if you could stop there, accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. So we're bringing in Israel as a state here. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or having dual loyalty. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. So in pushing out these examples, both federally and state by state and school district by school district, those who support the IRA, including the Anti-Defamation League principle among the organizations that support it, they want the federal government, the Department of Education, as long as it still exists under Trump, to use this as a basis for deciding whether or not schools are violating the rights of Jewish people by allowing this kind of criticism. And President Trump signed an executive order to adopt this for the Department of Education, but it's the executive order doesn't say they have to, it says it encourages them to. And the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which housed the IRA definition in Congress, has not passed Congress. And I would congratulate Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul on stopping that in a rather obscure committee hearing on the IRA examples. They were able to pass an amendment to this act to strip out all criticism of Israel from the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which basically stripped it of its meat, and it's now just languishing. Still, we have the executive order by President Trump, and the ADL is certainly taking advantage of that. If we can go on to the next slide, we will see how the American Jewish Committee is using the working definition in the United States. And I'm spending a little bit of time on this because this is really at the heart of the Anti-Defamation League's agenda is to see adoption of this working definition and the examples. And if we scroll down a little bit, it just mentions some of the states that have adopted this. We could stop there, and maybe a little bit further up, the other way. Yeah, perfect, right there. Okay, so either by proclamation or whatever they call it in that state, you know, governor's order, or by legislation, they have these states, Alabama, Alaska, or Arizona, Arkansas, and you can see all of them on the screen, New York, Vermont, Wyoming, have in one way or another adopted this definition. And so what's the upshot? What does it all mean? Who cares? Well, what it means is that it's more likely that organizations like the Anti-Defamation League, which is not only litigious, but also likes to file complaints, federal civil rights complaints, they will use this definition to file those complaints and to solicit a guilty verdict, and the hammer will come down on universities and school districts. You see the state of California is missing, which is a little surprising given how powerful the Zionist lobby is in California. So I would ask activists on this Zoom or watching this recording to take a look at this page and see if your state or your city has adopted the IRA, and if it hasn't, to let people know in positions of power, of authority, that you don't want them to and why you don't want them to. And if they have, ask them to repeal it, because we don't want to fuel this attack on public education, which is what, not just public education, public and private education. And the Anti-Defamation League has filed lawsuits and complaints numerous times. They've gone after the school districts in Santa Ana, California, and Berkeley. They've sent almost 200 letters to college presidents urging them to investigate, really basically threatening them, you know, investigate Students for Justice in Palestine or else. And this is a nonviolent group we all know was in the vanguard leading the anti-genocide protests in the United States. Let's take a look at Holocaust education state by state. So the Anti-Defamation League's agenda is advanced Holocaust education state by state, because that sows the seeds of rationalizing the genocide. And they, of course, don't call it genocide in Gaza. So Paulina, if we can go, do you have a Holocaust education state by state? Yeah. And here you see a map, and it's embedded in the Echoes and Reflections curriculum, which is one of the resources offered by the Anti-Defamation League. There are 3 principal resources for school, include No Place for Hate, A World of Difference, and Echoes and Reflections. Echoes and Reflections primarily for middle and high school, and it includes a unit on contemporary anti-Semitism. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But right now you can see they have filtered by status states that have mandated or recommended Holocaust education. And by color, you can take a look at this, where legislation is pending in Louisiana, Indiana, Wyoming, where it is mandated. I mean, it's all over, right? And in California, where I am based, there's a robust effort to expand Holocaust education throughout K through 12, even though the standards that we have, the objectives that we have written into the curriculum statewide do address Holocaust education. They want to expand it further. And of course, this Holocaust education, actually it's housed under the term Holocaust and Genocide Education, HGE. This does not recognize the Holocaust, the genocide in Gaza today, or the Nakba, or the unfolding ethnic cleansing in Palestine over decades. And lawmakers have stated that explicitly. And in California, which, you know, is oftentimes the bellwether state, it's setting the pace for other states. The governor signed legislation to establish a teachers collaborative. They call it the Teachers Collaborative, with the Anti-Defamation League, one of the principal partners. It's made up of 14 partners. Some of them focus on other genocides like Rwanda, Cambodia, indigenous in Turtle Island, but a majority are Holocaust-centered, and some of them, like the Anti-Defamation League, the Shoah Foundation, Yad Vashem, all of which were co-constructors of the Echoes and Reflections curriculum, they are Zionist, and that's what they want to indoctrinate students into. Next, let's take a look at the motion that was passed at the National Education Association. Again, 3 million members, largest union in the country. Will not use, endorse, or publicize any materials from the ADL. Will not participate in any ADL programs, teacher training. And they talk about the urgency because they need to respond to racism and justice, and the ADL is not the social justice educational partner it claims to be. Now, passing this was a Herculean task for the rank and file of the NEA. They had caucuses that they began, recently or a few years ago, some of them, but they had Educators for Palestine, they had a MENA caucus, and from those caucuses emerged this motion. It passed closely, but it passed. And on the heels of that, the ADL and the Jewish Federations, they started a campaign, an email campaign, as did CODEPINK and supporters of the NEA motion, to convince the president, Becky Pringle, and the board to overturn this, which is huge, right? This is a rank and file motion passed by a majority of delegates. There are about 7,000 delegates to the NEA. Within 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, the leadership, the top leadership of the union had overturned this motion, and people were outraged, union members just furious. And some asked why. Why would they do this? Why would they betray the rank and file? Becky Pringle reportedly met with Jonathan Greenblatt, who is the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. Some may remember he compared a keffiyeh, which I'm wearing, a symbol of Palestinian liberation, a scarf used by farmers in Palestine, to a swastika. So in overturning this decision, the reports were that the leadership was afraid that if they didn't cooperate with this organization, their federal charter, which they've had since, I think, 1913, something like that, would be revoked. And this charter gives them national status recognition, some tax exemptions. Well, I guess under the file of never succumb to a bully, or succumbing to a bully only empowers the bully, what we saw next was the Republicans in Congress introduce a bill to revoke the charter of the National Education Association, to revoke its tax exemption and any kind of perks that come with that. Let's look next at the Echoes and Reflections curriculum. So, the question is, why were the rank and file members, the delegates of the National Education Association, so up in arms against the Anti-Defamation League? So I think you have a link that says, what does it mean to be Jewish? Echoes and Reflections. Here we go. So before we start, just want to reiterate that this is the secondary curriculum from the ADL, the Shoah Foundation, and the Yad Vashem, all of which have headquarters in Israel. The ADL, just, under trivia, is funded by big donors, corporations. Corporate partners include L'Oreal, Comcast, NBC, Amazon, Coca-Cola, Bank of America, Barclays, O'Melveny, and Myers, just to name a few. Ford Foundation, Adelson Family Foundation, and others. They have about 60 million, I think, in their operating budget, 67 million in their foundation, endowment fund, rather. Now, this curriculum, we're not going to look at it line by line. Most of it is about the Holocaust, but all along there are crumbs that lead students to believe that Israel was necessary, that Jews need a Jewish state for sanctuary, that it is an insurance policy of one way or one sort of another. And then when they get to the unit on contemporary anti-Semitism, they just really hammer that home. So I want to share with you a video. Well, we may not look at all of it, but some of it that gives you an idea of how slick this is, this indoctrination. So if we can press on, click on, Paulina, what does it mean to be Jewish?
What does it mean to be Jewish? Jewish identity revolves around feelings of religion, ethnicity, and peoplehood that are dynamic. What do I mean? Let me explain. According to biblical text, the Jewish story begins with Abraham, who about 4,000 years ago was the first to introduce the revolutionary concept of monotheism, a belief in one God without physical form, later also accepted by Christians and Muslims. Abraham's family became the leaders of 12 tribes, the early people of Israel. Famine struck, and they left their homeland, becoming slaves in Egypt. Moses led them out and received the 10 Commandments, foundational moral laws emphasizing respect, justice, and ethical behavior. The Jewish commitment to learning and education as part of our religious and cultural traditions started here. The people of Israel eventually returned to their homeland. Jerusalem and the temples they built there became their spiritual core. Invasions of other people led to a 2,000-year exile of most of the Jews. During the exile, Jews settled worldwide, adapting to local cultures. Without one country or one language to unite them, what made them a people? Well, this is exactly where the feelings of identity that I mentioned before come in. First, there's our common religion, which can be practiced in many different ways, written in the Torah, also known as the 5 books of Moses. Our common memory, history, customs, and heritage are also key. No matter where we live, we celebrate the same holidays and have many of the same traditions. Another thing that's kept us together as a people for so long is our connection to the land of our ancestors, Israel. While there has been a continuous Jewish presence in the land of Israel, the yearning to return to our biblical homeland has been the deep and emotional heart of Jewish life throughout the 2,000 years of exile. The connection of the Jews as indigenous people in the land of Israel, as well as their experience of anti-Semitism, led to the Zionist movement. At a time of rising nationalism in Europe in the 1800s, the Jews sought to establish their own homeland. As part of the process, they even revived the dead language of Hebrew. The Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were murdered, highlighted the urgency of creating a Jewish homeland. In 1948, the modern state of Israel was established. It became a home for Jewish refugees from post-war Europe, from Africa, and from Muslim countries that expelled Jews. For many Jews, no matter where they live or how religious they are, a strong aspect of their identity is their connection with the state of Israel, the only Jewish state in the whole world. Our love of learning and need at times to struggle to survive have made Jews innovators, thinking outside the box. Wherever we live throughout the world, Jews have contributed.
Thank you. All right, maybe you can take that down and I'll just talk to people for a minute. Okay, so you can see how that film would serve the purpose of indoctrination. It's well produced, it's slick, and the message is Jews are returning to their beautiful homeland. There's no message of ethnic extermination, over 500 villages being destroyed, burned to the ground, some of them, the expulsion of almost 1 million Palestinians. None of that is featured in this film, part of the curriculum of the Anti-Defamation League that is being pushed out to schools across the country. In addition to this film, the Unit on Contemporary Anti-Semitism has included handouts for students that attack the BDS movement, a handout that attacks Muslim Americans for Palestine, a handout that attacks Jewish Voice for Peace. Regardless of the resource, whether it be Echoes and Reflections, No Place for Hate, A World of Difference, the Anti-Defamation League's curriculum takes students back to the ADL website and encourages them, if we can bring up the next link, to report other students or teachers who they believe are engaging in anti-Semitic incidents. Now, oftentimes we hear ADL statistics being used to justify whatever law or hammer is going to come down next on those who dissent during a genocide. These statistics, even the ADL admits that their statistics last year, they call it the anti-Semitism audit. 58% of those statistics were based on criticism of Israel. So let's move down a little bit, please, and you'll see where students can fill out this report form. And if students are using the internet and they're working on an ADL assignment, they may eventually be taken back to this to report. And so what we have is an Israel lobby group that spent over $1 million last year promoting the IHRA definition and legislating against BDS and so forth, is now capturing the private data of students. So all of this led to some of us in the Los Angeles Unified School District to go to the district, the board, the school board, 7 members, and testify against the ADL. If you can bring up that next link, Helena, I appreciate that. Okay, so maybe we can, don't start it yet, but if you can make it full page. There we go. So we went because the school district a few years back, under the direction of the man who is now president, Scott Schmerlson, had passed a resolution actually instructing the superintendent to engage the ADL in looking over their curriculum. I guess it's their social studies curriculum, and suggesting improvements. And we wanted to challenge that. So perhaps we can play a bit of this testimony. And my purpose in sharing this with you is to encourage you to do something similar in your school district.
Providing links on its websites to material from the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. The board should know that the ADL is a lobby group for the State of Israel masquerading as a civil rights organization. The ADL has an unabashed political agenda to support the genocidal actions of the rabid extremist Zionists who have taken control of the Israeli government. The Nation magazine has called the ADL the Israel's attack dog in the U.S. In 2020, more than 100 civil rights and community groups, including the Center for Constitutional Rights and the National Lawyers Guild, published an open letter warning that the ADL, quote, has a history and ongoing pattern of attacking social justice movements led by communities of color, queer people, immigrants, Muslims, Arabs, and other marginalized groups, while aligning itself with police, right-wing leaders, and perpetrators of state violence, unquote. Indeed, a visit to the ADL's website that the LAUSD links to reveals that the ADL distorts Jewish teachings, unjustly demonizes Palestinians and their supporters, and foments Islamophobia. Material provided by such a politically charged, racist, and hate-filled organization such as the ADL is but propaganda, not education, and has no place at LAUSD. I urge the board to remove the link and refrain from any future association or promotion of the ADL and any of its literature. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Crampner. I oppose the district website's link to the Anti-Defamation League's Echoes and Reflections curriculum. In addition to being a retired teacher of English as a second language in the adult division of LAUSD, I am also a Jew. Growing up in Brooklyn, I attended the Beth Elohim Synagogue in Park Slope. I was bar mitzvahed there in 1965. Over the last year and a half, I have watched in horror as Israel has engaged in a campaign of genocide against the Palestinians. The Anti-Defamation League does not speak for me, nor does it speak for the Jewish community. Its Echoes and Reflections curriculum echoes the party line of the right-wing extremists who now rule Israel, and it reflects a mindset of intolerance rather than defense of the Jews. As a Jew, I have experienced anti-Semitism. Opposing genocide is not anti-Semitic. Saying Palestinians are human beings with legitimate national aspirations is not anti-Semitic. criticizing Zionism, an ideology controversial among Jews since its inception, is not anti-Semitic. Curricular material which implies otherwise is not educational, it is propaganda, and yes, it is defamatory. It does not belong in LAUSD. The ADL's curriculum twists and deforms my religious heritage into a cudgel that deprives other religious and ethnic communities of their basic rights as American citizens. Please do not use echoes and reflections or accept any curricular input from the hate mongers of the ADL.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Husseini. I'm the Vice President of Operations and Administration at the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Today I represent the Muslim community, which is deeply concerned about the implications and effects of external influence on our K-12 schools. The primary focus of our schools should be to provide a balanced education that encourages critical thinking and a broad understanding of diverse perspectives. However, the involvement of third-party groups with specific political or ideological agendas risks skewing this balance, compromising our core educational mandates and influencing the academic freedoms that are the foundations of our institutions. We then mold young minds to fit a particular narrative rather than fostering an environment of learning and inquiry. The influence and fear-mongering eerily parallels dark moments in U.S. history, such as the Red Scare and the imposition of loyalty oaths within the UC system, where fear and discriminatory bias plagued academic integrity. Just as those actions and periods were reviewed with regret, this may also be our path if we continue to allow our schools to be swayed by such pressures. The American Muslim community has noted an alarming rise in Islamophobia within our schools, correlating with the influence of the ADL that conflates Zionism with anti-Semitism and vilifies American Muslims for Palestine. It is not just about preserving the integrity of our educational practices, but about protecting the future of our children and ensuring they receive an education that is free from hate. Let's keep the ADL and special interests out of our classrooms so we can educate and not indoctrinate. I look forward to our collective efforts to deliver educational excellence and promote critical thinking. Thank you so much.
President Schmerelson, board members, Superintendent Carvalho, I'm Marcy Winograd. Great to be with you. Thank you for your commitment to our students' success. I'm a retired LAUSD English and government teacher, a voting member of the UTLA House of Representatives, a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, and the organizer for CODEPINK's National Drop the ADL campaign. I'm here to ask you to sever your relationship with the Anti-Defamation League, a pro-Israel lobby group that spent $1 million last year on lobbying. The ADL's curriculum, Echoes and Reflections, I'm deep into it. I think it would be shocking if you looked at what they are teaching our students, and that is to conflate anti-Zionism, the rejection, a political critique, the rejection of an ethno-nationalist Jewish state that privileges one ethnicity over another, with anti-Semitism, persecution, discrimination against Jews. My great-grandparents were murdered in a Nazi concentration camp. I say never again for anyone. I say we cannot weaponize the Holocaust to justify the occupation of Palestine, the genocide in Gaza. Right now, 2 million people being starved to death. We cannot indoctrinate our students into this. And please take a look at the ADL website, which now says we no longer focus on anti-bias training. We are now solely focused on Judaism, the Holocaust, and anti-Semitism. No. The ADL is focused on vilifying peace activists, on genocide denial, and on complicity. Take a look at their Twitter page with the Trump administration's persecution of peace activists. Thank you so much again for what you are doing for our students. I'm really, really grateful. Okay, we can stop there. Yeah. So we had people testifying up and down the coast in California, in Santa Barbara, where I live, and other communities along the Central Coast, basically relaying the same message. Some of us have met. We met in LA with the board president who had written that previous resolution instructing the superintendent to work with the ADL. And, again, we told him all the reasons why that should not be. And of course, we need to follow up. But on the heels of that, our union in Los Angeles, the second largest teachers union in the country, well, the NEA is the umbrella, but under the NEA, you have the New York Teachers Union, which is the largest. And then you have UTLA, and UTLA passed a resolution very similar to the one that the rank and file of the NEA passed. So it was, helpful, I think, on the floor of the NEA Representative Assembly to know that one of the largest teachers unions in the country had already passed a similar motion. And finally, I just want to share with you our Code Pink Action Guide. That's the last link. And that is a page that we set up just to help people get started if you're interested in doing any of this work. And I think it's incredibly important, right, to challenge this narrative that Jews are forever victims, that there's no context to any of this, that we need to expand Holocaust education to justify, rationalize, normalize Israel's military operation, its genocide, its starvation in Gaza. So here we have Drop the Anti-Defamation League. We, again, are part of a national group, Drop the ADL from Schools. And if we continue further, you'll see some of the resources. Okay, so I have written about the collaborative I mentioned earlier in California. ADL genocide deniers are training teachers on genocide. This is absurd. We have a link to the motion that was passed at the NEA Representative Assembly. We keep going down. You have ideas for ways you can take action under the resources section. You click on that. Resource, let's see, take action on resources. You'll see a presentation on the ADL that you may want to use, sample petitions. You have the past testimony, which you just saw, as well as links to, keep going, testimony in other areas of California. So with that, I want to close and take questions and hear what your thoughts are in how best to challenge the influence of the ADL.
Thank you so much, Marcy, for inspiring us to act. We will have a question and answer session in just a second, but first some brief announcements as soon as I get to them. Unfortunately, everything here got rearranged. I apologize. I will be right there. Oh my. Let me see.
And while you're
yeah.
mentioning a recent event is that TikTok, which has about 130 million users worldwide, has now hired, under pressure from the ADL and other organizations, has hired a hate speech monitor. And that person, of course, is to monitor all the traffic, I don't know, with algorithms, I guess keywords. But this person they hired, Erica Mindell, she was a US citizen who made Aliyah to Israel and joined the IDF. And she's the TikTok hate speech monitor coming on board. How about that?
All right. Thank you, Marcy. We'll come back to that. So after a few short announcements, we'll have questions and comments from participants. To ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the reactions button and then choose raise hand. That should be at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please keep your questions short. Ask one question at a time to allow everyone to participate. And keep in mind that this is a comradely forum for political discussion, so please show respect to other participants and the moderator of today's session, as well as the speaker, certainly. So the upcoming programs on Sunday, August 10th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, will have a talk by Peter Byrne from Project Censored and an award-winning investigative journalist. The title of his talk is The Dangerous Militarization of AI and the Profiting Behind It. That's Sunday, August 10th. I am not quite sure what will happen the following week, but on Sunday, August 31st at 10:30 a.m., we'll have Migration as Economic Imperialism, a talk by Emmanuel Ness, who is the author of the acclaimed Migration as Economic Imperialism, How International Labor Mobility Undermines Economic Development in Poor Countries. And that's from Polity, published in 2023. All right, so then let's start with a Q&A. And we'd also like to remind you that you can sign up for email notifications of our programs at ICSS Marks CodePINK.org, where you can also find links to video recordings of our past programs. Contact us with feedback, suggestions for future programs and topics, as well as make a donation. That's important to support our Sunday programs. There's a Buy Me a Coffee. The coffee cup icon is what you want to look for. All right, so we'll start with Steve, followed by Janet Coburn. Go ahead, Steve, you can unmute. Steve? We lost Steve. Janet, go ahead.
Thank you, Paulina, and thank you, Marcy. I might as well mention that I'm a retired teacher from the New York City school system, thus a former member of the United Federation of Teachers, which, although it has a huge Jewish membership and has supported Israel over the years, it recently endorsed Zoran Mamdani's candidacy for mayor, which is pretty amazing to me. I assume you've seen the documentary titled Defamation 2009? Yes. Okay. I consider it a classic. I'd like you to comment on it. And for those who haven't seen it, I'll read a description of the film. Director Yoav Shamir, an Israeli Ashkenazi Jew, embarks on a provocative and at times irreverent quest to answer the question, quote, what is anti-Semitism today? Does it remain a dangerous and immediate threat, or is it a scare tactic used by the right-wing Zionists to discredit their critics? He speaks with an array of people from across the political spectrum. He records a conversation with his mother who emigrated to Israel from Russia. He meets Abe Foxman, the director of the ADL in New York City. This was in 2009, and gets access to the ADL headquarters. He subsequently travels with Foxman to Israel and Ukraine, along with an ADL delegation led by Foxman. While in New York City, Shamir explores reports of violence against Jews in Brooklyn, basically debunking the ADL reports. He also meets with ADL's fiercest critic, author Norman Finkelstein. Another thread in the film is Shamir traveling to Auschwitz alongside Israeli school kids. Shamir's discoveries and findings of the realities of anti-Semitism in 2009, when the film was made, are shocking, enlightening, and surprisingly often wryly funny. I highly recommend this film, even though it was made 16 years ago. It is still current, and it might be a good tool to use in the Drop the ADL campaign. You can find it on the Internet Archive or Wayback Machine, same thing, and you need to set up a login to watch it. I'll post the link in the chat. I mean, I can play like a minute or two of the film if I'm permitted.
It's fine with me, sure.
Yes?
Yeah.
It'll just be the sound because I don't have screen share. All right, here.
Or if you want to send the link to Paulina, she could probably share the screen.
She'd have to log in. Can you hear it?
Not very well. I don't, Janet, I think that you would need to share. If you put the link in the chat, I can share it for you.
Well, in terms of my response, you know, if somebody asked me about is there anti-Semitism, is it on the rise, I would say yes, it is on the rise, but I would point to Israel as the driver of anti-Semitism around the world right now. Israel claims to be the state of the Jewish people. So when people witness live stream genocide, who are they going to blame? You know, I don't think it's unreasonable to see where people would make that connection. Of course, we know there are lots of anti-Zionist Jews, and there have been ever since the founding of the State of Israel, the imposition of the State of Israel on historic Palestine. But you can't claim to be the state of the Jewish people, destroy every university in Gaza, kill or wound hundreds of thousands of people, create a new classification of children who are orphans, bomb hospitals, refugee centers, and on, and say whoa, there's this horrific rise of anti-Semitism that's not connected to this. So that's what I point out when people bring this up. Most people, I think, right now are pretty tired of these false charges of anti-Semitism, although it's still being weaponized effectively. There are people who are afraid to say anything because they don't want to be accused of being anti-Semitic. Probably all of us have met somebody along the line who's fearful of saying this, or they feel that they don't have the authority, they don't know enough, or it's too complicated, or they're not Jewish, so what can they say? And, you know, look, as US taxpayers, we're funding this. I think it's an estimated $25 billion since October 7th. Never mind that we've been funding this to the tune of almost $4 billion a year for a long time. So as taxpayers in the United States, we all have a right to speak up and say we don't want our money, our taxpayer money, to be used to slaughter people in Palestine. No. So that's my response.
Thank you so much, Marcy. This is the film on Internet Archive that Janet was referring to, and Defamation 2009. And I think we have questions, so we'd better go to those, and I'll stop sharing my screen, but those who are interested can find the film on the Internet Archive, archive.org.
Could you just play like a few, even a few seconds of it?
Absolutely.
A flavor.
But if nobody objects, I will do that right now.
Sure.
I think maybe we should go to questions and then do that afterward.
It'll only, yeah, but since we're on the topic, it's only, we can only play maybe 30 seconds if that's what people want.
You know what I'm making the film about?
No.
About anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism, what's that mean?
It means when people hate the Jewish people.
No way, man. The Jewish people control the world.
Yeah?
Of course.
Being an Israeli Jew, I have never experienced anti-Semitism myself, but it's a phrase that always seems to be in the air.
All right. We do have questions, so let's take advantage of that. We'll hear from Eugene, followed by Raj, and then Citizen of the Planet. Go ahead, Gene. You'll need to unmute first, please.
I'm unmuted now, I think. Well, Marcy, thanks so much for your talk. It was really great. Really appreciate your talk and all the work you're doing. It's just so wonderful. And I'm a member of Veterans for Peace, which is, we consider CODEPINK a kind of a sister organization, and we do support all the work you do. And as you know, we're an organization that's dedicated to the abolishment of war, and we're very concerned because of this about the way our government is supplying military, diplomatic, and financial aid to Israel to carry out its genocide. And that's a large part of our work. And the other things are, crucial, but this is what we do. And I just wonder if you'd like to comment on that, the military aspect of U.S. support for Israel.
Yes, thank you, Gene. Thank you for all the work that you're doing with the fabulous Veterans for Peace, an organization I have worked closely with over the years. Yes, at CODEPINK, we have participated in protests at Travis Air Force Base, at the site in Las Vegas where they operate the drones. We have supported boycotts against Netflix for deleting some of the stories about Palestinians, at Trader Joe's for selling products from Israel. In terms of the weaponization, we have Medea Benjamin. She's a co-founder along with Jody Evans of CODEPINK, who is in the halls of Congress on a daily basis. I don't know if you've seen her on social media, but she and many others are challenging members of Congress about their votes for genocide. Most recently, I'm pleased, I'm not pleased, but I am more hopeful. because we had a majority of Democrats in the Senate vote to restrict arms to Israel. Bernie Sanders had introduced joint resolutions of disapproval, which automatically can go to the floor. They don't go through committee. And on my Facebook page, I've listed all those who voted with Bernie on this. And I think that's telling. It's been support for Israel as an ethnic supremacist state has been bipartisan over the decades. And now we're really seeing a split. The most recent Gallup poll taken July 7th through the 25th revealed that only 8% of Democrats support U.S. military, they support Israel's military action in Gaza, whereas 71% of the Republicans do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope I've touched on it.
Thank you. Yes, it does answer my question. Thank you.
We'll hear from Raj, followed by Citizen, and then Sharon Rose. Go ahead, Raj.
Okay. Thank you, Marcy, for your work and the talk. I think it's a very bad situation in Gaza. It is practically a genocide of Gazans, and the conscience of all of us as human beings is so violated that this has to stop. But the problem is that the state of Israel is there to stay, and the compromise with Palestinians means it has to be a secular state which allows both, and the very foundation of a Jewish state would not be possible with that. So I think this seems like one of those problems that has no solution, and this leads to this kind of behavior by Israel, and then the question about what is anti-Semitism. And it is very bad for the Jewish people. So do you have any comments about the larger picture on which is driving all this? I'd like to hear your comments on that. Thank you.
Yes. In terms of a solution, I don't pretend to be a spokesperson for Israel or Palestine, for Palestinians or Israelis. I have long supported what might be called a one-state solution, where you have a secular state, equal rights. At this juncture, it's hard for me to imagine Palestinians in Gaza wanting to live in a state with Israelis who have supported the genocide. That would be a huge leap, right? So, I'm open, and I think a lot of people in the Middle East are open to solving this one way or the other, so that we have an end to the genocide, an end to the ethnic cleansing, and some semblance of equality. That would be my response to what next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hear from Citizen, followed by Sharon, and then Richard Fallenbaum.
Paulina, can you go ahead and take Sharon and Richard first, and then I'll follow after that? Is that okay?
If that's okay with Sharon.
Sure. Thank you, Marcy, for all the work that you and CODEPINK and others are doing. It's a huge task, and they have a lot more resources, which they are bringing to bear everywhere, as you showed us. I just wanted to add one thing about their line and their curriculum. So my son is 38 years old, and he grew up in Oakland Public Schools. And he grew up in my house, and I am a long-time anti-Zionist. And he knew that. I talked to him about it. And yet, when I was talking to him about, after October 7th, I was talking to him about the horror that was going on. He said, "Oh, Mom, it's an ancient conflict. The Jews and the Arabs have been fighting for millennia." And that's their line, right? And I tried to tell him how totally wrong that is. And it's a result of imperialism and the Nazi genocide and the refusal of the United States to accept more refugees from the devastation in Europe, and instead wanting them to go to Palestine, which many did. And many did because they didn't think they had any choice, or they actually, objectively speaking, they had no choice. And so I think it's important to also have an understanding of the origin of what's going on in Palestine and Israel and in the Middle East in general. There's an article in today's New York Times. I didn't read, I just saw the headline. I have to, about the Sykes-Picot Treaty being the origin of what's happened since then, and the horrors of everything that's gone on in the Middle East stemming from that, which I think is a good point. And it's interesting that the New York Times would publish that right now. But thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing, Sharon, your personal experience. I'm sure that was hard, to have your son push back like that. I think we have to open up these conversations with everybody. We can't assume anybody understands the history of this colonization of Palestine. And I've often wrestled myself with the question of, to what degree do you continue friendships with people who are still Zionists? And by that, I don't mean people who support slaughter or support genocide. I just mean people who still think Israel must be a Jewish state. And there's still a lot of people like that who are quick to blame one person, Bibi Netanyahu, for all of the horrors and not understand that it started long before him, right? So those conversations, they have to happen, and you have to have a lot of patience. Certainly we want to be wise and strategic with the application of our resources and our energies, but if there are opportunities to open up those conversations, how did your son respond?
It was on the telephone, so I think he was rolling his eyes. I can't be sure. We're going to have more talks, of course.
Sure.
We haven't seen him in a while. He's coming in a few weeks. So
it's an ongoing conversation, and it's interesting that you brought up the New York Times. I haven't had a chance to look at it today yet, but I did. I have like another month on my subscription. I ended up canceling my subscription after reading about the instruction that the editors had given to reporters to avoid the terms ethnic cleansing, genocide, occupied Palestinian territories, and their failure to headline this genocide on a daily basis. I think they're responding to some of that. I think there have been a lot of cancellations, so they're responding.
Right.
All right. We'll have Richard and then Roger. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I think it's important that you brought out the financial base of the ADL. I think it's a mistake to focus exclusively on the Israeli domination use of the ADL. It's fundamentally a tool for finance capital and big capital internationally. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to describe the Israeli regime likewise as a tool of international capital. And I think Marxists take that for granted. But I think not giving enough emphasis to that tends to play into the inter-ethnic clash aspect of this situation. And I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate that feedback. I think you're right. Israel is a huge exporter of technology for surveillance. And we see in our own teachers union investments in Palantir, which is using some of that technology not only for war, but also to surveil immigrants in this country. And this is a business. Yeah, it's about business, commerce, follow the money.
All right. We'll now hear from Citizen of the Planet One, who had requested to wait one turn, and then Roger and Judith. Go ahead.
Yes, Marcy. First of all, I want to thank you and the rest of Code Pink for all of the marvelous work that you have done. It's breathtakingly marvelous. I just wanted to know whether you and perhaps other members of Code Pink have ever posed the issue of Zionism the way I have. And I say that Zionism itself is anti-Semitic because it equates the Zionist invasion and steady takeover of historic Palestine, the dispossession and massacres, the village destructions and other steady ethnic cleansing, the land and home confiscations, and the mass imprisonment of the indigenous Palestinian people with all Jews for all times. So that's my question, and I just wanted to make a comment about the issue of Zionism that I'm sure many people realize, but I just wanted to put it out there from my perspective, that Zionism is, of course, a political ideology, and Israel is, of course, a political entity. Neither are an ethnic group or a particular people, and thus any political ideology or entity is open to critical analysis and potential criticism. And last, I want to say, in case people don't know, there are lots of YouTube videos about Jews who overcame Zionism. And it's very eloquent in their description of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, yeah, for bringing that up. That's a great point. And that is a point that I make, that to adopt the IRA examples is to promote anti-Semitism, because you are conflating all Jews with the state of Israel, which has committed all of these crimes, was founded on a racist ideology. And now you're blanketing all Jews, branding all Jews as supporters of this. No, Jews are not a monolith. We don't speak with one voice. So stop stereotyping them. Yeah, it's really anti-Semitic. And not only that, but I often bring up that if you read the 10 Commandments, one of them is to reject idolatry. And that means you don't worship false idols like a nation state, right? Yeah.
All right, let's hear from Roger, followed by Judith, and then Steve, who has been trying to ask a question, but I think he may have had trouble connecting. So Judith, go ahead.
Yeah. Who should go now?
Oh, sorry, Roger, my bad.
Okay.
Misspelled. Yeah, your hand went down and I just looked at my screen and spoke without thinking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I put it down when you mentioned my name. So Marcy, let me just join that well-deserved chorus of people praising the work that you have done personally and also the work that Code Pink does. We're all very appreciative of that, as well as I'll also mention the Jews for Peace.
Jewish Voice for Peace.
Voice for Peace. What wonderful, wonderful things. It's one of those things that really does make me not being a self-loathing Jew. But I have a question, very quick question, and then I have a follow-up question if your answer is yes. Did I hear you say that anti-Semitism is on the rise?
Well, based on police reports, yes. Of course, a lot of the ADL statistics are inflated because of the conflation.
Yeah, so let me just sort of comment on that, because that is one of the tropes that the Zionists have been putting forward, that Jews aren't safe, that they need to be protected, that they need to be protected by actually destroying anybody who disagrees with them. So I think agreeing with that has consequences, but if it's true, then we have to face those consequences. But you probably listened onto those recent congressional hearings by that monster Representative Randy Fine, who had the chutzpah to, after bullying people and destroying people, said, "How will you make my son feel safe when he goes to college?" I mean, it was just like ridiculous. This guy who's destroying people is worrying about whether his son might be offended by hearing words that he might not like. So when we say that anti-Semitism is on the rise, I think that's maybe having a nostalgia for a past that never was. certainly awareness of anti-Semitism is on the rise, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing that people realize and get called out for anti-Semitism. But if you look at the experience of my grandparents, and certainly of your grandparents, what people are experiencing now, we're not experiencing a historic rise in anti-Semitism. There's been a long history of anti-Semitism, but actually there's been tremendous progress, incredible progress in the other direction of an acceptance of a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, a multi-belief and faith society. And I think we have to really stick to that. Yeah, there are some instances, but those are cherry-picked. And of course, as Norman Finkelstein correctly said, there's an industry behind that. And the ADL is a perfect example of that. So maybe you could comment.
Sure. I'm reminded of a comment from Gabor Mate, who's a famous, very well-respected trauma psychologist, who said there's no business like show business. So yeah, it's an industry. And when I say anti-Semitism is on the rise, I'm basing it on reports here and there, but we really don't know because the ADL statistics are so inflated, and that's what's always invoked when people justify this attempt or that attempt to silence dissent. And I would also want to comment for a moment, because I haven't yet, on the anti-Semitic nature of the marriage between the Christian Zionists, the fundamentalists, and the Jewish Zionists. You have about, I think, CUFI, the Christians United for Israel, they say they have about 10 million members. They estimate there are 30 million Christian fundamentalists who believe in the end times. They believe in the rapture, that Christ will return when all the Jews gather in Israel. And then if they don't embrace Jesus Christ, they'll go to hell. So this marriage is probably the epitome of anti-Semitism, right? So that's something that certainly we want to address. And right now we're seeing all of this play out, the empowerment of this Christian Zionist base in the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. That is the marriage of Christian Zionism and Wall Street, because this foundation, which is really a death trap for Palestinians lining up for flour, being killed by the IDF or US private military mercenaries, this is headed up by a guy named Johnny Moore, the Reverend Johnny Moore. He's a protege of Jerry Falwell, the founder of Liberty University, the home of Christian Zionists, 15,000 attendees, 80,000 online. And he is also on the board of the International Foundation for Christians and Jews, which promotes Jewish immigration to Israel for the end times, and located in Chicago, the International Foundation of Christians and Jews. Also located in Chicago, conveniently enough, is McNally Capital, which set up a shell corporation, Safe Reach Solutions, to oversee, to run the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. So we really see the marriage of Christian nationalism, Zionism with Wall Street being played out before. This is all, I imagine, this will all presage the takeover. I mean, they are hoping for the takeover of Gaza by Christian nationalists.
All right.
And that this humanitarian foundation somehow will be a cash cow for private investors.
Thanks, Marcy. I'll call on Judith now, followed by Richard, right? And then I'll call on myself. Oh, did we lose Judith? Oh, you need to unmute. There we go. One more time.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you, Marcy. Your work is very impressive. So I have a number of things to say. First of all, if anybody wants to know how the Israelis are educated to be completely insane, you should look at any videos by David Sheen, Sheen, and and the after seeing that, I think is even though they're evil, they're really they're victims of their education. They're total victims, and they're stooges. And they're stooges of capitalism, basically. So, anyway, another thing, addressing the founding of Israel, the Zionist gangs killed Jews that were pro-Arab, that believed in getting along with the Arabs. So they killed their fellow Jews also. So what I really want to say is this: I was very curious that China, which is supposed to be a socialist country, was when it came to Israel, their statements were kind of bloodless, namby-pamby. Can't we all get along? We should all adhere to international law and that kind of thing. So I looked them up in Wikipedia, and I was astounded to discover the business and military ties between China and Israel are so extensive. And I know Israel has made it a point of extending their web to every country that they can possibly invade, and in fact, they may be buying Argentina's water, which Milei is offering for sale. But you have to go to Wikipedia and look up China ties with Israel, and you'll be amazed. And it's my opinion that if China were to cut their commercial and military ties with Israel, Israel would be finished. They're that extensive. So, okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Judith, for sharing those resources, your insights, and your thoughts about the close relationship, economic relationship between China and Israel. And that is important to look at. I mean, yeah, you're right. Israel's trying to extend its tentacles into every corner of the globe. And of course, the United States is the largest arms supplier. So wanting to keep that in mind, I would say that if the US were to stop arming Israel, this would be over soon. We supply.
Yeah, it's excuse me for interrupting. It's not just arms. China is building infrastructure in Israel. They actually, the port of Haifa that was bombed by Iran, that's owned by China, well, leased by China, and they built railways, light rail, bus roads, trains.
Yeah, it's extensive. I think there are a lot of guilty parties here, right? And they include, those building infrastructure, like you mentioned, China, and trading, as well as arms suppliers, the United States, number one, Germany right behind it.
Yeah, and the university,
the Arab
scientists. Yeah.
Thank you, Judith. All right, let's have some more questions. Richard, I believe, has already asked one question. Is that correct, Richard? No, my bad. Then I'll call on Richard and then on myself and then whoever wants to ask more questions. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah. That was Fallenbaum that made his comment.
Yes.
And anyways, thank you for presenting. You already preempted my APAC Baptist inquiry. And I gotta say, I was kind of hoping that, never mind, I won't get one. Anyways, what you haven't really mentioned, you've mentioned doing things about going to, petitioning Congress, going to school board meetings, a lot of demonstration kinds of things. I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, it seems to me that I'm not sure how effective that is. And I guess if are there any any expanded versions here, any visions of getting out and doing more political organizing, because I think that's ultimately what you're ultimately faced with. And I'm not so sure that talking to school boards or city councils are cutting it anymore, or for that matter, Congress, especially Congress. I mean, so anyways, if you can maybe address that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that pertinent question, Richard. Is lobbying or advocacy work with electeds of any use at this point? And I would grant you that it's certainly not the be all end all, and we do need to do more political organizing, but I think you need both. And my message to teachers would be ultimately can't cooperate with the Anti-Defamation League. Now, can they refuse cooperation as single individuals? Yes, with great risk. If they have families, they need their income. But when you have unions and rank and file who are in solidarity, I think it'll be a lot harder for the ADL to penetrate. And so flyering in front of schools, engaging local unions, as I mentioned, I think Paulina mentioned, I'm a voting member of the governing body of UTLA that did pass a motion to reject the Anti-Defamation League. So sending that message out, I think, can be a powerful one. A lot of teachers may not know, it's free curriculum. It's about hate, combating hate. Sounds good, right? So there's education to be done, and there's, of course, organizing to be done. Yeah.
Thank you, Marcy. I'll call on myself now, and I wanted to make a comment and then ask a question. In the news now, just today, is that Brazil has left the IHRA Coalition for Holocaust Awareness, the International Holocaust Remembrance Association. If you maybe could comment on the work of that coalition internationally and the significance of Brazil announcing that it's leaving it, besides the fact that Brazil is also joining South Africa in its international Court of Justice suit against Israel for genocide. But I also wanted you to, Marcy, talk about the next step for the National Educators Association, because you did mention that the rank and file voted overwhelmingly to break ties with the ADL, and then the executive committee, was it? They just said we're not implementing it because they gave some BS excuse because we don't have any, what is it? We don't have any official ties with the ADL, so it would be hypothetical or perspective to the future. So what are the practical next steps for educators that are not giving up, I'm sure? Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. In terms of the last question first, I am not a voting member of the delegates, the rank and file of the National Education Association, though as a member of the California Teachers Association, I am a member. And I have been in conversation with a lot of delegates about next steps. And I can't speak for them, but I think next steps have to include school site organizing and raising awareness at the very local level, because generally that's where we're most effective anyway, not with Congress that's so bought these days by corporations and by the state of Israel. So there's conversation about next steps. They are definitely organizing, so we'll see. In terms of Brazil, that's great that they're leaving the coalition that's supporting the IRA examples. I mean, that Brazil can set an example for certainly the global South, and I hope to see more countries do that. That would be fantastic.
Thank you. We have a new hand, so I'll have Alan, then followed by Citizen. Go ahead, Alan.
Hi, Marcy. Terrific presentation, very informative. You're doing great work and really holding the line there very effectively. So thank you very much. I have a couple of quick questions. One of them is, was there any involvement of Palestinian organizations or Palestinian educator organizations in this campaign that you've been waging against the ADL? My second question is how this could be tied into people's immediate interests more than just a moral consideration, which is obviously the horrifying things that the Israelis are doing, but really talking about the fact that so much money is being spent supporting Israel when the education system is being starved to, the public education system is being starved to death under capitalism. So if you could comment on that, and actually on the last case, how that can be done without really generating anti-Semitism, because it sort of does come down to people saying, well, look, we're putting all this money into supporting quote unquote Jews, but then, look at our education, our kids are not getting educated.
Excellent point about raising the issue of material interests, because as you said, a lot of people can't really afford to focus on the moral question. They've got a family to feed and lots of expenses. So yes, we try to work that in, all the money that we're giving to Israel. And that's been a common theme on social media, all the money we're giving to Israel that has a healthcare system for all. And here we are. And the primary reason why people go bankrupt in the United States is because they can't pay their health insurance or their healthcare bills. That's a very important point to bring up. Your question about, are there any Palestinians involved in this Drop the ADL campaign? So at CodePink, we have a Free Palestine campaign that is run by Palestinians, Palestinian Americans. Check it out. They're wonderful people. They put out great social media campaigns, one of which is to boycott Birthright Israel. That the Drop the ADL from Schools campaign was really launched by a woman, or she says she co-launched it, Noura Lester Murad. She was born she was Jewish. She married a Palestinian, lived in Ramallah for 3 years. And if you Google or site search Drop the ADL from Schools, you'll see a letter that has been signed by, I think, 90 organizations. And I'm just looking at it right now. So among those who are signatories are the Palestine Arab and Muslim Caucus of the California Faculty Association, Palestine Legal, Palestinian American Community Center, Palestinian Feminist Collective, Palestinian Youth Movement, which is now protesting Maersk, for shipping weapons or weapons parts to Israel. So those are just some of the organizations, but yes, there are Palestinians involved.
Citizen, go ahead, followed by Janet.
Yes, before my question, I just wanted to say, I think that this recognition of a so-called Palestinian state is purely performative, instead of those countries stopping their arms sales and funds to Israel and stopping the genocide. Marcy, I hope I know we're all really busy, but I hope you get a chance to read a commentary I wrote called The Left and the Israel Lobby by me, Joseph Anderson, Berkeley, and it appeared in Dissident Voice. And the commentary addressed this issue that Israel is merely the puppet of the imperialist US. And I'll read just 2 short paragraphs from it and get your response. The difficulty with this argument is that puppets don't behave the way Israel does. The Israel lobby doesn't fall all over itself trying to demonstrate to American politicians that Israel is an obedient and useful lackey. Quite the contrary. The lobby puts its vast resources and constituent mobilizations into bullying and threatening these very same politicians in order to get its way. And woe unto any politician who doesn't comply. No other country on earth has a lobby like this in the United States. Short next paragraph. But why would the lobby, if Israel were indeed the essential tool of American imperialism that Finkelstein et al means Chomsky and Zunis, claim, need to be so aggressively threatening? That would only make sense if there were actually a genuine danger that many American politicians, absent those formidable and unignorable threats, might conclude that, in fact, Israel is not a very useful, let alone prerequisite proxy. After all, foreign lobbyists are supposed to be doing our fighting there for us. We just supply any necessary arms, technical assistance, and satellite reconnaissance, which in turn begs the question, how has the Israel lobby served, if arguably at all, rather than upset U.S. interests? So I'm wondering your response to that, because, we don't have a lobby for Mother's Day, right? Because the U.S. would celebrate Mother's Day anyway. So, why would there be a need for this multi-$100 million lobby if Israel were merely the puppet of the U.S. and, and would do what the U.S. wants anyway?
And is it Joseph?
Yes, Joseph Anderson
Yeah,
from Berkeley.
thank you for sharing that passage. I want to read your essay. Absolutely. Maybe you can link it in the chat.
Okay.
This is a conversation that I think is ongoing with the left. Is Israel a proxy of the United States, or is the U.S. becoming a proxy of Israel? Who's wagging the tail, the dog, whatever the saying is? And I think that I think I agree with you in that relegating Israel to mere proxy status is not accurate, because we see Israel, as you said, threatening with money, primary challenges, all sorts of members of Congress. And when Netanyahu comes over, like during Obama, I mean, Netanyahu came over to challenge Obama's support for the Iran nuclear deal. And you see all these Congress members giving him a standing ovation. What a slap in the face to the sitting US president. So they certainly have outsized influence if they're just a proxy.
Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Do you know the status of California's AB 715?
Yes. Well, for those who are not familiar with this legislation.
Can I just, yeah.
Sure.
So, and is there any connection between that and your Drop the ADL campaign?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, Janet. Okay, so I didn't want to get too California-centric, but if California is one of the, quote, leaders in this Israel lobby campaign to shut everybody up during a genocide, then it's important to look at this legislation. AB 715, yes, I am very involved in it. I've written a few articles about it and have been involved in a coalition throughout the state of California to kill it. AB 715 would do a lot of things. Number one, it would if this is even constitutional, it would outlaw the words Israel settler colonialism from the classroom. Okay. It would basically adopt the IRA examples of anti-Semitism to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. It would establish a statewide anti-Semitism czar to police the teaching of Israel, Palestine in the classroom. And that it would also, this anti-Semitism czar would oversee indoctrination, they don't call it that, anti-Semitism prevention, K through 12, but not just K through 12, starting in pre-K, that's 18 months, So those are some of the aspects of the bill. The bill started out as, I don't want to bore people with all the details, but ethnic studies has been a target for the Israel lobby, because situated in ethnic studies is the study of settler colonialism and the movement to decolonize. And so they don't want any discussion of this. And in California, there was a law passed in 101 that ethnic studies would have to be offered as an optional course in high school by 2025, and it would become a graduation one semester, a graduation requirement by 2030. Since then, it has just been the target of the Israel lobby. The ethnic studies curriculum that was created initially mentioned BDS. I read the curriculum. It didn't really go into much of it at all. But just like if you want to do a homework assignment, you could research this and 10 other things. And the Israel lobby went crazy. So they then demanded a new model state curriculum, which left out anything about Palestine. And on the heels of that, this other group formed, Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. They're part of a statewide coalition now to defeat AB 715. Also in that coalition is Jewish Voice for Peace Action, CARE, and AROC. And as a result of a lot of grassroots pressure, the legislation which flew out of the assembly, when it went to the Senate, the hearing in the Senate Education Committee was canceled because they didn't think they had the votes to pass it out of the committee. However, the leader of our state Senate and the authors have promised to bring it back before the legislative session ends in September for a vote with some amendments. Unfortunately, the Israel lobby has so intimidated our state legislature that the chairs of what we call the diversity caucuses, Black, Latino, Asian American, they co-authored AB 715. Now, when it was initially introduced, it was skeletal. It wasn't as bad as it is now. It was bad from the start, but now it's horrible. I mean, now it's just ridiculous. And so they're still signed on as authors. I don't know that you can actually take your name off a bill in California once your name is on it, but they really sold out their communities, and that's unfortunate. So the battle continues. You know, it's ethnic studies is the target, as is anti-Zionism.
Thank you so much, Marcy Winograd. We were out of time, so I apologize to those who wanted to ask more questions, but we do want to be respectful of our guests' time as well as all the others. Marcy, we'll have to hear from you again about the California situation, because that is a whole can of worms in its own, and a big battle. Thank you, everybody. Please visit ICSS.marks.org to sign up if you haven't done so already, or to donate and support our program. We want to call your attention to the coffee cup icon on our homepage. That's our donation page. And thank you, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you, Paulina, and everybody. I enjoyed, appreciated the rich conversation that we've had, and I have a lot to think about myself. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the program now. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.